quickly introduction. I am Nathan Stockman, Director of Learning Design with Youth Force NOLA. And we are excited here to host you today for our bi-monthly Community of Practice meeting. As mentioned at the top, this session is being recorded for the benefit of your peers who could not make it, or anybody else who would like to refer back to this content through video. And along with me today presenting is Ramel Fuller, Manager of Learning Design and veteran of the soft skills development movement in New Orleans. He's been leading our soft skills teacher fellowship, as well as the soft skills educator cooperative now for a number of years, and has a wealth of experience and insight into soft skill development in the classroom, as well as many other skills and talents. So as we get started today, I would like to just remind you all that our shared vision at Youth Force NOLA is that New Orleans public high school graduates will be thriving economically as a result of being the most sought after talent for hiring and advancement in our region's high wage career pathways. And so just a quick addition to that, if you don't already know this, are 4 pathways that have been identified as high wage and having plentiful careers are digital media and IT, skilled crafts and construction, health sciences, and business services. And so at Youth Force NOLA, we are working hard to make sure that opportunities abound for our students in those career pathways. Today's session will follow a similar format to what we've done in our Community of Practice meetings. After the welcome, we'll go into a building block focus. Today is social awareness. And then I'll pass it off to Ramel, who's going to talk to us about magnifying recognition. And then we'll close with some Q&A. We certainly can take more than 5 minutes than's allotted, but I just wanted you to preview that we have scheduled about 40 to 45 minutes for today's session. So as we get into the before we jump into the social awareness building block, I just want to remind everyone of the 6 building blocks that we utilize in our framework. And again, this framework is developed by the team at MHA Labs, led by Leslie Beller. And the 6 building blocks are that of personal mindset, planning for success, social awareness, communication, collaboration, and problem solving. And so within those building blocks, there are 35 power skills that represent the soft skills that we teach our young people in any and every opportunity that we can find. The reason why we have latched on to the MHA Labs formula or framework and not one of dozens of other soft skill frameworks is because it's rooted in research through both practitioners in industry, in schools, in academia, even young people. There has been research done with those groups as well as anthropologists to make sure that it is in a non-biased language and also that it is rooted in strengths-based philosophy. And so for those reasons, we believe that it is our best ticket at becoming a cohesive and consistent community of soft skill developers. And when we talk about soft skill development, we want to make sure that we ground ourselves in these skill building practices. The reframe that you see on your screen is an acronym that we use in our Introduction to Soft Skills training. And so it's important to just kind of root us in this. So we always believe that skill building involves revealing the targeted skills, so understanding exactly what you're trying to develop, making sure that you establish evidence for what success looks like, and also sharing that evidence with your young people. And then making sure that the activity is focused on that skill. As a former school leader, one of the most common areas that teachers would fail in is that their lesson is designed around things that are so much more extraneous to the actual skill that's being targeted. And so when we narrow it down to really focusing the activity on the skill, we can almost assure development in there because we can target our feedback, which leads to the remaining components of reframe. which are magnifying recognition, developing meaning making, making sure you're assessing through feedback, and lastly, the idea of engagement. So that's our skill building. Those are our skill building principles. And we may refer back to those throughout, but if you haven't heard of that, feel free to join us in our Introduction to Soft Skills workshop in July. So today's social awareness building block, today's focused building block is that of social awareness. I want to give everybody an opportunity to read the social awareness building block that you see on your screen. When we discuss building blocks with skill builders who have done this work, this is not the one that comes to mind first and foremost. This is one that sort of lives on the outskirts. I can say that we've all had opportunities and dabble with this building block, but it's very rare that we find a practitioner who really leans into this. And so we thought, as we near the summer, and for some of you, the end of programming, or for some of you nearing the beginning of programming, we wanted to kind of address this building block here, and just kind of get some thoughts and some ideas around how we can continue to build this in our young people. So we have recognizing the consequences of one's actions, balancing your own needs with the needs of others, taking into consideration others' situations or feelings, developing and implementing strategies for navigating in different contexts. And so this building block here covers a lot. So what we're going to do at the very top, I see 9 people in the call. I will take 4, and Ramel, you'll take 3, and that'll be 9 people covered. We're going to do a discussion, a small group discussion. And so the prompts for our discussion are here. Have you ever found yourself teaching social awareness through your content? Have you ever been surprised by a lack of social awareness when dealing with people, young people? How can we teach social awareness proactively through our programs, and why is it important to do so? Key in on that term, proactively versus reactively. And lastly, what are some obstacles to developing this skill in young people? And so I don't want to just throw you into the breakout room without giving you an opportunity to think through these questions. So I'm going to put us on a 90-second timer here and just kind of think back and reflect on the questions that we've posed here. And as you do that, I will be building the breakout rooms, and we'll send us there in 90 seconds. All right, take about another 20 seconds. Okay. Before we jump into our breakout rooms, I just want to frame what we're going to be doing here. So in your breakout room, take an opportunity to go around and just kind of introduce each other in the room. And then we're going to discuss these prompts. And as you discuss the prompts, really think through both maybe strategies or tools you've used in the past, as well as ways that you can build on this for the future. Um, this idea of a soft skills community of practice is not that Ramel and I are the experts and have all the answers. It's that together we can collectively come at and arrive at answers that help our young people and improve outcomes. And so we want to make sure that we really lean into this crowdsourcing of good strategies. Also choose one designee to share out. And then when we come back to the main room, we'll share what we've discussed. All right, so I've got my rooms created. I'm gonna open the rooms and you'll have a pop-up screen that will pop up and it'll ask you to join a room. Please do so, and we will reconvene back in the main room at, we'll call it 1:30. All right, well, welcome back everyone from our breakout rooms. I don't know if you found it, Ramel, but time went really quickly, I think. We need to think about that. 10 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes seems like a lot, but so let's go ahead and share. We talked through, have you ever found yourself teaching? Are you surprised by a lack of? How can we teach it proactively? And then lastly, what are some obstacles? Mr. Elwha was nominated from our group to share our thoughts, and then we'll go over to group 2.
We stated in my group that often we teach social awareness as we gather in the morning time for our inspirational time to discuss and explore different topics and see the norms and sometimes compare them to our norms and the lives and experience that we have compared to others. We share, and yes, we're sometimes surprised at the actions of some, but as it was stated, it's all according to someone's environment in which they've been reared to tell which actions is the norm or the norm within that particular environment. What are some obstacles? Possibly could be just getting them to see the benefits of changing certain behaviors compared to keeping the old ones. Because sometimes, the first law of nature is survival. So if my old behaviors enable me to survive joyfully, but they're not normal for anyone else, which should I choose? And I think this base data, should I stick with the norms that I survive in, or should I stick in the norms that someone else expects or benefits them?
Yeah, very excellent thoughts. Would anybody like to respond?
I just want to say, well, Mr. Elwha and I are in the same setting on those Saturday mornings. And just wanted to say that we have extremely lively discussions with our young people. And one of the things that stands out is that they say they don't have the opportunity, especially in a school setting, to express themselves and to have discussions about things that are of importance to them. So as I said earlier in our session, that platform to have the opportunity to discuss is so important for our young people.
It's a very, very, very strong point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I have a further thought about that, but I'll save it. Ramel, how about your group?
So group 2, there was a ton of great experience, as well as different perspectives that led us into the same themes. So I took notes here, and I was elected to kind of work through these. So please feel free to jump in if I'm missing anything or nuance, but I think I've got a pretty good sense. So several people right off the bat pointed out that they believe that social awareness in the form of respect, almost like a fearful respect, starts in the home, right? And so you have respect that has to evolve then into like empathy and consideration for others. But that like home base of respect is where everything should probably start in the view of our group. And we even talked about like almost teaching parents to teach in a way, kind of getting into that space of preparing. And Posa mentioned how she kind of has a cultural navigation that she does for her young people, for her kids, actually. Then we talked about how this is changing generationally. So in the last decade or two, I think one person mentioned, I think it was Dolores, but they mentioned that in the last decade or two, these norms have changed more drastically, or the feelings in them. And so that's what's been surprising to us. But we've been able to find ways to teach through and around that and sort of build empathy and social awareness in avoidance of peer pressure. So one example was scenarios, having discussions about scenarios that are low risk, low lift, and having young people think about things from other perspectives. So now they have to mentally put themselves in other people's shoes. And that creates a little bit of an awareness that there's some way to think or consider things that is not their perspective. And then secondly, I had mentioned that what I've been seeing more recently in some classrooms right before the pandemic started was in literature classes and humanities classes, pushing the young people to ask and answer the questions, what are the different perspectives involved in this, reading, or who's represented in this particular historical account, whose view is missing. So trying to help young people when the magnifying glass is not on them particularly, to practice seeing other perspectives when it's not the high stakes of, oh, you, and a very personal thing. And so that's what we had. The big obstacle was just helping young people now in this generation manage authenticity and not being fake necessarily, but understanding social and contextual norms. So that's all the notes. I think I try to get everybody into one cohesive.
Good. Well, that you're getting a thumbs up, so you must have done a fine job.
We have some experienced educators on the call. I was kind of intimidated.
Yeah, you did well. Okay, well, thank you both groups for sharing. I really appreciate it, and I just want to thank you, Lynette, for bringing your team here. This is great to have this group. As I don't want to say a closure to this conversation, because it's always ongoing, but one of the things that we kind of talked about leading up to this session was that developing social awareness, so being able to effectively look outside of yourself, really starts with identifying yourself and being comfortable, or at least acknowledging who you are internally. And I just want to make mention and make sure that we understand that anybody who's taking this information in, that journey, or that becoming self-aware as becoming social aware is a journey. I'm a former baseball player and a baseball coach, so I like to think of repetitions as at-bats. And as skill developers and as leaders, we have to understand that for our youth, it requires a lot of at-bats. My teachers used to say to me, well, Mr. Stockman, how many times do I have to tell it? And I would stop them and I'd say, one more time. It's always one more time until they get it. And so understanding that it requires at-bats, understanding that it's developmentally appropriate as a young person to maybe not be able to grasp this right away, but that we are part of the growth. And just like a fourth period on Friday or a pep rally day, as is common with youth, embrace the chaos and be there for them to develop these skills. Acknowledging that we do play a part in this is very, very important. And to your point, Dolores, earlier about the obstacles, one of the obstacles being they don't have the platform. I think, this is just my opinion, but after having been around a lot of young teachers, I feel like a lot of young teachers feel ill-equipped to provide that platform because they don't know how to support. And so this is, our job is to be able to both encourage the platform, but also provide the tools to be able to moderate that platform or just be a listener. So I have put together 5 basic tips for helping develop social awareness, and just thinking that you are building a culture where growth and reflection are honored, and so that you make that part of your culture. Also consistently stating and reminding youth of the expectations. And I love that you all have a consistent outlet that allows them to get lively on those Saturday mornings. The third bullet point, I have bolded the word guided, because I think we have to both provide guided opportunities And then the fifth point is providing independent opportunities. And so allowing the students to wrestle with this with adult growth and guidance and independently. And then the fourth point, sandwiched in between the two, Dolores, speaks to your about the obstacles, which is providing opportunity for student voice and providing a platform. And so I think these are steps that we can all, try to envelop within our programming to encourage young people to take advantage of social awareness. Okay. So thank you again for letting us share with you a little bit about the social awareness. All of these resources will be shared with you. We have the MHA building blocks that we'll send along as a follow-up to the email with the recording, and you feel free to reference those. And as always, Ramel and I are here to discuss further anything to do with any of the content we share. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to pass it over to Ramel to kind of lead us through the next part of our session.
All right, everybody. So to get this thing kicked off, we're going to be talking a little bit about magnifying recognition in our education spaces. What I would like to do to get things started is to ask you to use the chat right now and post just some way that we recognize and celebrate young people, whether that's inside of school or outside of school. So think of this as a brainstorm. I just want to throw as many ideas into the chat about how we recognize young people and celebrate them in or out of school. So I'll give everybody just a few seconds here, maybe like 30 seconds. This is very quick, informal. Okay, we got motivation, announcements, social media, end of year awards programs. Okay. And I'll hold for like one or two more. Sort of caught being good. Okay, I think I've seen that in schools, especially like over announcements and like project boards as well, things like that, right? Yes, way to engage. Yes, Dolores. So the engagement. So, because that's a great way to recognize and engage parents and leaders. So thinking about that, I would love anybody to come off of mute and tell me just briefly, what do you think young people should take away, learn, or feel based on these recognitions that we've mentioned in the chat? And I'll open the floor just briefly.
One of our college students was elected as one of the homecoming royalty individuals. Okay. So that week I used her picture as a background in Zoom. So as I went in and out of different spaces, the question was, who's that person? So it was an opportunity to share and spotlight the student and then report back to the student that she was shared out in the various circles during Zoom that week.
And how do you think that made her feel? Or I'm assuming her, I thought you said her. How did it make them feel?
In the vernacular of the old school students, she was all cheesed up.
Okay, all right. And so for anybody else, what are some things, just looking at that list in the chat, how would a student feel or what would they take away or learn?
I think one of the things that we kind of fall short on is acknowledging students' efforts, even if the achievement is not the A, the B, or I just think the effort. And I think if we start putting more and more into this, recognizing the students' effort, because some of our students, they may always be an average student, but they put in the work and they put in the effort for it. And I think we have to really start paying close attention to that.
Ooh, I promise I didn't pay her to segue me like this, but that was fantastic. Let's go to the next slide really quick and we can kind of dig into some of this.
Well, Mel, did you ask her which program she's with? What program is that lady with?
Look, that's the best director in the world. This lady is with the McNair Scholars Program at the University of New Orleans. And that's why our scholars rock.
There we go.
And so we're seeing some real-time recognition right here. So, you know, we know what recognition looks like, right? We're seeing it and we're doing it right now traditionally. We name the things in the chat. I think a lot of those are represented here. Now let's ask ourselves, sort of like what was asked earlier, Do young people actually understand why they are being recognized? Do the celebrations we take part in empower those young people? And then maybe even uh, do we celebrate and empower the young people who don't necessarily get the outcome prize, right? Like the end result prize, the A, the first place trophy. So let's look at look a little bit deeper at two examples, and I'll give you some framework for those two examples in the next slide here. So when we magnify the recognition and basically making it even more effective, it should be three things: empowering, specific, and varied. So let's lean into empowering for a moment. The whole reason we recognize to make people feel good, right? We want them to feel like, just like we did right in that conversation a moment ago, we were referencing a program and talking about how great it was and validating it, right? For our young people, we're validating them, something in their process, something about their identity, something about their outcome. We're validating something. But if we're doing this well and really magnifying this so that everyone understands, it's got to be intentionally inclusive. Meaning, sorry, I flipped my own notes. I apologize. Meaning, how do we ensure that our attempts to celebrate skills and outcomes don't reinforce the same marginalization of the quiet kid or the average student or the bad kid, the kid who may have come in a little rambunctious or had other things going on? How do we not lay another layer over that struggle, right? Then we've got specific. I think so many of our encouragement and recognition are effective in a way to make a kid feel good, but not necessarily effective to bring home the same actions and to get those same actions coming out. So great job today is something nice, right? But what if it was great job digging into creating multiple solutions today with your group? You came up with so many different ways to solve that problem. Now the young person really knows exactly why they are strong and powerful in a particular area, and they still have the positive feeling. And then it allows for something to be instructive to others. So think about, like in a classroom, they do positive narration rather than trying to catch or put out the fires of a few students kind of off the task or expectation. When you narrate the positivity, it gives people a cue to get in with you, right? And then lastly, we want to vary our recognition. So that means in frequency, in the content of what we're recognizing, and maybe even the source of the recognition. So maybe it only comes from the teacher sometimes. Maybe it's peer recognition in other times. So let's look at two examples in classrooms here in New Orleans, and we'll wrap up to give you a little bit of time to ask any closing questions. So this classroom is Mrs. Lumad's classroom at Edna Carr High School. She is a biology 2 and AP biology teacher. She actually selected some skills that she would work on for the whole year. Her aim, as you can see from the whiteboard in her room, the smartboard, is for students to be independent, lifelong learners for college and for life, right? So she tied that to the planning for success building block that Nathan covered a little bit earlier as we were getting to social awareness.
Sorry.
That's no problem. So the skill that she actually was asking students to get strong with was applying existing or newly acquired knowledge and strategies towards achieving goals. Basically, use your existing resources. Because what she found in science is students would ask for the shortcut answer from her or from their peers and not actually engage in scientific inquiry. So she made a point to kind of rework her class where students have 4 or 5 concrete resources they always could go to. And she would work with them on sort of checklisting that, right? So she's again pushing them to use this skill, apply the existing or newly acquired knowledge to your goal. So let's look at one way that she recognized students. She did what's called a recognition roster. She took her actual classroom roster, just every student who's supposed to show up on a given day, wrote out when she saw the student showing the skill or maybe some outcome from the skill. So again, she was recognizing effort, growth, process, but also outcome. Because she know they're going to be, there's just going to be, like a bell curve. There's going to be some A students and some D and F students. That happens in life. But we want to recognize the process, right? Because the process should bring you to a reasonable outcome. She actually handed these out around Valentine's Day of that year. So she called them skillograms, sort of like a candygram at school. but they were skillograms. So one of the students is in the picture. That's great.
Mama, I was just texting them to say one of our students is in the picture.
That's great. So they've been doing great with using their resources, right? But the thing is, they all knew it because she wrote the same thing in all the skillograms and just put their name on the outside with a little like sticker and candy, right? So now people are getting recognized, but it's 100% clear that it's for using this skill or for achieving something by using the skill. And I was just observing the classroom, and the students are like, hey, can you take a picture for us and send it to Mrs. Lumont? I did not offer this or anything. They wanted the picture for doing so well. And so they felt positivity from it. And Ms. Lumont kind of capped it by saying, I'm going to continue looking out for all students doing this, whether you have an A in this class or you're still working, recognize that you could still do this skill well, even if you're not an expert at biology. And you may not even use biology in the future. You will use this skill though. That's assured. So let's look really quickly at her tool that she used to set this up, because everybody sees the end product. Not everybody sees the work. Remember, I mentioned she just took a class roster, wrote soft skill observe and power skill. Power skills are like the adjectives that can quickly reference. So resourceful might be an adjective for these students using different skills, or clever, and then she wrote down evidence she saw in class. And she put that on a clipboard. Most educators have a clipboard as they move about. And she just wrote these down. And she made sure every single person in her class at some point was recognized for growth, effort, process, or outcome. So everybody understood a moment where they did this very well. And she was timely about it. Some of them were the end of units. Some of them were throughout the week. Some of them were the end of the year before they took this testing, which those pictures are from, because you'll see the kids actually had on some medals. And some of those were for like performance in the class. So let's look at one more example. This is also from Edna Carr, but this is a teacher in the Project Lead the Way classroom named Mr. Boccato. So his students, they had to generate potential solutions to a problem, seeking and leveraging diverse perspectives. So that skill was on the top of most of their worksheets. It was written up on like sort of a nice illustration at the front of the class. So the students are familiar in visualizing this skill. It is not something that only he's saying. They're seeing it, reading it, and even being prompted to say it as well. The setup of the class was project-based, Project Lead the Way. And so what the students would do is they would have different engineering challenges. The issue that Mr. Boccato saw was a lot of kids were opting out. They're like, oh, I'm not good at science. Almost like how people have done in the past with math. And people say, oh, I'm not good at math, but they don't have a problem with their check. They know how to count that up, right? So when it matters, people feel confidence in an area. And so this is what Mr. Boccato sought to build. He wanted to build their identity as engineers, problem solvers, and he made a process for it. So he didn't have to put engineer in front of it. This is just a process you can follow. So let's look a little bit deeper. In Mr. Boccato's class on the left, what you see are what are called awesome cards. These cards say I am, provide a blank, and then say because, and provide a larger blank. And what Mr. Boccato would do is write their name at the top. And for the first week or two of class, when he saw positive things happening, he would write the power skill he saw of them and then the evidence. And he gave out like 2 or 3 of these a week. It was not super consistent. It was just to start this process. Students got really excited about this as he pushed them with different introductory activities to explore the soft skills, to explore their strengths, to talk about like who they wanted to be in class, not necessarily in career, but when they're working in their group, what do they want to be known for? Are they the glue person? They want to be a leader? Do you want to be the project manager? Do you want to be the person who keeps morale up? He led them through different activities. They found their strengths and sort of identified what they wanted to be their strengths. Now on the right, this is a different way that Mr. Boccato had recognition going. He gave out 2 awards at the end of every sort of project challenge. One was the award for the soft skill we talked about, generating multiple solutions. One was the award for I guess at the end they have like different creations they have, like these young men here have, and that award was given for the one that like actually achieves the goal of the content of the class. So again, they have a process award for the soft skill itself, and they also have an outcome award for the rubric and content he's working on in that class in engineering. This particular group won the actual rubric. You know, they created the thing that did the job for the project. But the point is, he recognizes one group for each. And so he was able to recognize in a varied way with the awesome cards, with peer identification of power skills and their strengths. He was able to do this in terms of process with the soft skill. And then lastly, he was able to do this in terms of outcomes. So he was constantly recognizing at different tiers and in different ways. And I could not find the quote for the life of me, but there was one young lady, she had me in the back. I was like, somebody's cutting onions, because she put her awesome cards into a shadow box. She
Wow.
kept all of them. You don't know the impact you have on some students. So this is recognition. This is how we get more out of students. This is how we empower them. The students saw themselves as engineers by the end of the year. They were owning it and calling it. They just knew they were all going to solve the next problem of the world and be the next Dr. Mackey. So this is recognition at NACAR. I hope these two examples were instructive. Nathan, I think the next slide has just a summary of those 3 keys to recognition, empowering, that is specific and that is varied. So make sure, again, you're being inclusive with this and recognizing that we want to recognize people, or that was a little redundant, but we want to recognize people and acknowledge them, but we also don't want to reinforce old challenges that students have. We want to lift everyone up. So I hope that was helpful. I know we're right at about time. Do you all have any questions or thoughts?
But Mel, as you were sharing, I began to visualize our summer program. One of the thoughts that I'm hoping will come to fruition for our pre-college as well as our college program is that we would take upon passion projects, so that the students would look for an area within their community that needs improvement, and we agree upon what that area is. Then we have to come up with the solution. So as they come up with the solutions, we would begin to magnify the power of their voice in that particular area.
It definitely, in thinking about recognition, what are the skills and processes and traits that one needs to go from identifying the passion projects to building out things to address them? There are different ways that you might recognize, as long as you're being specific about why they're being recognized along the way. I think those process acknowledgments will net the outcome. And then, of course, it's easy at the end of the year to have a big celebration for, you know, whatever has been done tangibly. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you guys for the presentation, and the information just was fantastic, as Ms. Teresa said. But I wanted to say just one example. We have a young man who just recently started with our program. I was told by his grandmother that because of his stutter, that he was not going to be a talker. She said, you know, you're really not going to hear from him, but I'll make sure that he's there. But just simply by acknowledging his efforts and working on those confidence builders, this young man talks so much to each and every one of us. It's not just the first person that he encountered with the program. He's open and talking to so many people and willing to share his gifts and talents with us. So, you know, just helping to build up that confidence in young people, and you know, giving them the opportunity to express themselves makes so much of a difference. But thank you all again.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, that is a great story. One last thing to share. Another idea of recognition that I just thought of, I did at my former school, was I would have teachers fill out we did honor roll, the standard honor roll, and then we did something called on a roll, which, Teresa, this reminds me of what you were saying about recognizing students who give great effort, but they may only ever be a B student, you know, or a C student. And the way we would magnify it and the way we would make it specific is the teachers would write, I recognize Ramel for being on a roll, and then they would have to do a specific thing that the student did. And then we would go into the classroom and we would actually read that description to the class in which that student was receiving it. So the teacher was cheesing because it was their student. The student was cheesing because they were getting it in front of their peers. And the other peers were understanding what this young person did to get recognized. So it was kind of like the perfect storm. And I didn't even realize, Ramel, that the value of that at the time. So anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us. And Ramel, I want to thank you. I always love working with you on a presentation. The prep we do is one thing, but when we do it live, you always like inspire me. So excellent job today. If you are interested more in our soft skills educator cooperative, that is the work with teachers specifically, the fellowship model, Ramel is your guy if you have any questions about that. My primary area of development right now is with our non-school-based soft skills practitioners. So if you know folks that are doing out of school, after school programs, or you guys kind of fit into both categories, but you know, if you have any other people that you know might be interested, you can send them my way. It's simply our first name and then at youthforcenola.org. We have our next intro workshop in July. You can follow us on Eventbrite for updates on when that gets published. Well, we're working on the times because it's summer. We want to make sure we are respectful of what time of the day we do it. And then lastly, we will send out a survey. We're going to ask folks to complete a survey that just kind of helps give us some opportunity to develop our practices. I'm going to